Dunban, the true hero of the entire game, is another very strong character in Xenoblade Definitive Edition. He's got access to some very useful arts that help the party and can deal a lot of strong damage himself, all while being an effective dodge tank that allows much of the rest of the party to remain healthy. As always, there will be spoilers on the 7th party member in this video when I'm showing off the menu-based sections, but I'll try to limit it as much as I can. Watch the video at your own risk. And if you enjoy my content, be sure to subscribe to me because it really does help out so much. So let's start off by taking a look at Dunban's arts. His talent art is Blossom Dance. Basically, this art is a 4-hit combo that deals a lot of damage. It's one of the highest damage attacks in the game. Basically, just land the QTEs to continue the combo to completions. It's one of the best moves you can use when maxed out in a chain attack because of how much it can do. It does take a lot of auto attacks to charge up fully, but luckily Dunban has some ways around this that help him use it more often. It's a solid talent art and an important part of his kit. His first art is Gale Slash. It is an art that does decent damage and applies a bleed effect on an enemy for 10 seconds for even more damage. It can also combo into his next 3 arts and is all around a great art that you should pretty much have equipped at all times. The next art is Worldly Slash. It hits twice for some nice damage and also lowers enemy defense by 20%. This will stack with other sources of defense down like Slit Edge, so this is very useful for helping both yourself and other physical party members do even more damage. When used after Gale Slash, it will also lower enemy strength. This can be very useful to cut enemy damage. Ironically enough, to get more damage out of Gale Slash, you'd want to use it after this art, but it doesn't really matter all that much. The defense down is the main positive effect of this ability, and with the cooldown being shorter than the effect time, you can have 100% uptime on this. Electric Gutbuster is an art that will apply Break if used after Gale Slash. It doesn't do all that much damage, but since Dunban can also topple, this allows him to effectively break and topple on his own, which can be useful at times. Tempest Kick is an ether art that can be used to remove a buff if used after Gale Slash. It's not very useful, honestly, and Dunban is much more of a strength-based attacker, and buffs aren't all that common on enemies in this game. It does have one gimmick use that I'll go over later, though. Soaring Tempest is Dunban's 3rd exclusive damaging art. It has a very wide area of effect range in a circle and hits 3 times. Each hit will charge up Dunban's talent gauge. This art is great in almost every situation for letting Dunban have more damage to having some very solid area of effect in fights. I definitely recommend having this equipped at all times. Its main weakness is probably the pretty long cooldown it has of 40-ish seconds. Steel Strike is Dunban's topple art. If an enemy is broken, Dunban can topple for 3 to 6 seconds, just like Ryan's while down. It's a great art against any enemy who can be toppled, and it can be stacked with Ryan's and other topple arts to do topple locking. So because of that, it's typically always going to be a useful art. Demon Slayer is a massive gimmick art. Essentially, if you're in a multi-enemy fight and finish an enemy with this move, all other enemies that aren't immune to topple will be force toppled. This can be used to get topple locks on strong enemies early in the game, but honestly, it's not really going to be useful in most normal battles unless you just enjoy using it as a gimmick. Thunder is a very strange art. If there are enemies behind Dunban and you have an aura active, you can daze these enemies. This is the only way to actually inflict the daze. You cannot use this on a toppled enemy to get daze. Problem is, in most normal fights, you'll be facing the enemy at all times. However, there's actually a way to get your back facing an enemy, and it's the Tempest Kick gimmick I talked about earlier. After using Tempest Kick, your back will be facing the enemies you were fighting, so if you have an aura active, you can quickly use Thunder to daze the enemy for 2 seconds. It's very niche, and I honestly wouldn't recommend worrying about doing this, but it can situationally be useful for the daze, but it just requires 2 art slots for less than stellar arts, which can be annoying. Outside of that, it's a less than stellar pulse attack that comes out from his backside. I'll let you make your own conclusions about that one. So Dunban actually has 6 auras. Sadly, only one can be active at a time, and most aren't overly useful compared to his main aura. Peerless here is by far Dunban's best aura, and the one you want him using 90% of the time. So unlike most auras, this one has a party-wide effect. Curing Confuse is extremely situational, but the 155% strength buff applies to the entire party. It's basically the Kaiser zone of this game. This is not only an amazing support effect for a physical party, but it helps Dunban's damage tremendously as well. It's a great aura you can easily get 100% uptime for also, so your party is always buffed with a lot of extra strength. I highly recommend you keep this on him at all times. Battle Eye gives you some double attack rate, gives you lock on, and fills the talent gauge when you evade attacks. Honestly, none of this is nearly as useful as a 155% strength buff to the party, and there's not much practical use you can get from this that really helps out that much. Spirit Breath grants a massive 105% haste buff and removes all debuffs from Dunban. This aura is okay for having extra auto attacks, but still isn't going to give you better damage than Peerless. More talent gauge is nice, but Dunban has different solutions to that with the other two arts and a certain skill. Debuff removal is not relevant when you should have debuff resist equipped as a gem anyway. Serene Heart is a pretty good aura. It increases his accuracy and evasion by 50% and 75% if his health is low. This can be very helpful in a pinch if you really need to dodge attacks or hit an enemy, but typically if you're properly using agility, this should never be an issue at all. It's an okay aura to have on him if you need it at the very least. Heat Haze is an interesting aura that automatically removes all of Dunban's aggro, but gives him 100% critical hit rate. This can be good if Dunban is about to die, because it lets him heal up with his critical healing skill, and guaranteed crits can also fill up the party meter super fast with all of his attacks, and especially soaring Tempest area of effect. It's still super situational though, and Peerless will be better most of the time. Still, I use this aura from time to time, and it does have some pretty good uses for it, unlike most of his other auras. Jaws of Death is an extremely situational aura that can revive you if you're about to die. That's it. It's okay if you have on just to use before death, but overall it's not necessary unless you're really struggling with an enemy. Blinding Blossom is an art that basically takes aggro from your party members. Typically, Dunban should have enough damage and ways to get aggro without this, so I don't think it's overly necessary, but if you absolutely need Dunban to have aggro and he's not taking it, then this is a decent art. Final Flicker is an art that sacrifices 20% of your max HP to fill the talent gauge by 50%. I personally like having this art equipped just in case I need to get Blossom Dance up if I want a chain attack or something, and it's useful on the AI as well, so you might be able to get Blossom Dance up in a chain attack. There's a lot of different art setups you can do with him. Personally, I'd recommend always at least having his 3 red damaging arts, Peerless, and Wild Down, but you can usually mix and match his other arts depending on what you might need at the time. As far as Dunban's skills, once again I like using the passive effect from Enthusiasm for the strength up, but Wisdom can be useful if you really need extra agility. His other effects aren't really all that useful if you ask me. Naturally, you want to max all of his skills anyway, so that part doesn't matter too much, but some particularly good skills he has include Ardent Strike for extra tension, Sustained Spirit for extra aura duration, Critical Drain for healing every time he lands critical hits, and Solid Foundation for blowdown immunity. As far as his skill links, I'll explain them in a bit more detail. So we start things off with Shulk here. Battle Cry is a very nice ability because it lets you have high tension at the start of basically every battle as long as you land the QTE before the battle begins. It also gets you that much closer to very high tension, which of course is very, very nice for giving you a bunch of bonus effects over the course of a battle. Underdog is a good ability to have because it's just a straight agility buff at the start of battle with high-level enemies, and it only costs 2 coins. Agility is, of course, very useful in this game, and having agility at the start of a battle is very nice just because that'll allow you to get high tension that much quicker. Chain of Friendship is a great ability that you should pretty much have on everyone, as I already stated. The 15% extra chain link chance will increase your chain attack durations as much as possible and give you the absolute most benefit out of chain attacking. Ultimate Teamwork is another amazing ability that increases your chain attack damage by 25%. This is great if you have those long chain attacks already, because you'll be able to get a lot of max multipliers in your chain attacks. And because they really just wanted Dunban to have all of Shulk's really good star abilities, you can also link Glorious Future to Dunban. So every time you get a vision in battle, your talent gauge will fill up 100%. All of the cooldown issues you might have with Blossom Dance are not an issue with this. You will automatically be able to have Blossom Dance up anytime you get a vision, and that means you automatically know your AI will have it up if you have Dunban on AI, so you can always chain attack with Blossom Dance up. It's a great ability. I highly recommend using it on Dunban just because his talent gauge is very important for him to do as much damage as possible in chain attacks, and combined with all this stuff, he'll be doing a lot in chain attacks, and that's very useful. Battle Character just increases the damage of your equipped weapon from Ryan. It's very useful to just make sure you're doing as much damage as possible, since weapon attack power is different from all the other damage calculations, and it's basically the basis for everything that's going on. Rampage is good for increasing double attacks. Double attacks are good on Dunban. It gives him more auto attacks, and auto attacks are a big source of his damage. Reckless Courage gives you strength up buff at the start of battle with high level enemies. Costs 2 coins, very similar to the agility up buff. It's just useful to have. No reason not to have it, honestly, because strength's good on Dunban. Ties of Friendship. This is the same as Shulk's ability, but it gives you another 5% chance. You can reach 100% chain attack continuation if you can hit perfect QTEs and chain attacks, and that's very, very nice. Power of the Moon. This increases your strength at night. That's very, very nice just to always have 15% extra strength at nighttime, and Dunban enjoys having extra strength because he likes doing a lot of damage. High speed, this increases your agility by 15. Dunban is an agility tank. He dodges attacks. Having extra agility is very good for him. Critical combo. This turns all double attacks into critical hits. Dunban is a character that gets a lot of use out of critical hits and double attacks, so this is very, very helpful for him. You get extra healing this way, and you can charge up the party meter that much faster. It costs 70 coins, so that is its major weakness, so please keep that in mind. If you're running out of space, then you might not want to use this, but it is very, very helpful for him if you need it. The Ultimate Strike increases damage of critical hits by 20%. This is a great ability, and it only costs 13 coins. All of your critical hits now do more damage, and you do a lot of critical hits. It's very, very useful, very synergistic with this other ability, and I highly recommend using it. Amazing Stars. This reduces all cooldowns at nighttime by 15%. Every art can benefit from having reduced cooldowns, and using your marks more often means more damage and everything else. I highly recommend having this skill. Pretty Stars increases your strength during the night by 15%, same as Melia's ability. Highly recommend having this just because extra strength is always great for doing a lot of damage. And finally, always ready, extra agility 10. I know it's only 10, but I mean, extra agility is always going to be useful on Dunban. He dodges things, he likes having extra agility, so yeah, just use this ability. So, as far as his equipment, Wyvern Cutlass is probably going to be his best weapon 90% of the time, but it is worth noting that Darkness Sickle does have a slightly higher auto attack maximum of 30 and a slightly higher critical rate of 3% at the cost of 120 auto attack minimum, 50 physical defense, and 10% block rate. Wyvern Cutlass is a much more consistent weapon, but if you're going for absolute max damage possible, you could use Darkness Sickle for that. I would recommend mostly sticking to Wyvern Cutlass, though. As far as the rest of his stuff, like I said in all the other videos, the actual gear does not matter all that much as long as it's decently late game and has gem slots. Glory Gauntlet is a must, though, because haste is very useful on Dunban, so it can auto-attack more often, and it synergizes very well with double attack. You cannot get haste on any other armor pieces of gear, so having it on armor with automatically is very, very useful, so you're not wasting a weapon slot, and that allows you to synergize it with double attack to get a lot of auto attacks off, which are a lot of his damage since he doesn't have many red damaging arts like someone like Ryan would. So auto attacks are very important for Dunban to doing as much damage as possible, and along with the double attacks are guaranteed critical hits, and the extra critical hit damage, you can kind of see how I can get so much damage with that. Attack Plus is just great for raising his maximum auto attack damage, so you're doing as much damage as possible. Physical Defense Down is great because it has a chance of applying Physical Defense Down on an enemy every time you auto-attack, and Dunban auto-attacks a lot. It's a great support effect and also great for increasing his own damage as well, and I'd highly recommend it. If you want to go for more consistent damage, you can actually swap this with Attack Stability or something like that. You can also put Topple Plus on Dunban for topple locking builds. There's a lot of options you can put on him, but this is typically the kind of stuff I like to run. Weapon Gem Strength, that's really good for making him do as much damage as possible. You can always go more defensive. He gets a lot of benefit out of recovery up since he restores HP with critical hits and everything like that, so you can run that kind of stuff. Debuff Resist is great to make sure you're always not getting hit by debuffs, and you're not going to miss that one aura that removes debuffs because you'll always be able to resist all debuffs anyway. Agility up 50, I don't think I need to explain this. Agility up's great on Dunban. He is a dodge tank, like I've already said. That's typically what people call him anyway, but he also does a lot of damage as well. He does a lot of things really well. Dunban is great. Besides that, like I said, there's a couple other gems you could run on your armor here that might help. Good Footing's a good ability. Spike Defense if you need it on certain fights. Dunban automatically does get spike resistance on his skills, as you might know, 20%. So combined with Spike Defense, just 175% gem, you get 95%, which is going to be enough for any fight, no matter what. So Dunban's really good, and these are the kind of stuff I like to run on him. You can run whatever you want, though. So with that said, let's get into some actual combat. Typically with Dunban, what you're going to want to do at the start of basically every fight is activate Peerless and then go into Gale Slash or Worldly Slash. You want to get that physical defense down lowered as soon as possible. Now on an enemy like this, sometimes he'll resist it, but other times it'll work just fine. I usually like starting off with all my red arts as soon as I can and save Blossom Dance for when I might actually need it. It is worth noting if you have Glorious Future Link, you'll get Blossom Dance up whenever there's a vision, which will usually happen whenever he decides to use a dangerous attack. Now, as I already said, Dunban's one of his main things is that he can do a lot of good things in chain attacks, so with the chain of friendship linked from Shulk and Ryan, with all of them having it, you can get 100% chance to continue a chain attack as long as you can hit perfect QTEs. I'm going to kind of demonstrate that in just a second once I can get Worldly Slash off for the physical defense down here. Now, what you'll notice about this chain attack is that you Slit Edge second, and it actually gets resisted, so I don't get that extra 50% defense down. And that's going to be important because it's going to cut the damage of everything else in the chain attack, but you'll see that that doesn't even actually matter at all. So I'm able to do quite a bit of damage just from thanks to the worldly slash lowering defense, even though that's the only source of defense reduction right now. You're gonna see Blossom Dance just kind of nuke his health bar here. Like, the last hit's gonna do 104,000 damage, and that's just the last hit of the art. And with the 100% extra chain chance, we're able to just continuously link between Dunban, Shulk, and Ryan, and the Mono Buster is able to finish off the Blizzard Belgasus pretty effortlessly. So let's just showcase another example of how just amazing Dunban can be with the chain attacks and getting them up really quickly and using all of his high damage with that, with all of his party buffs and defense down and everything like that. So before fighting Avalanche Opposite, make sure you have debuff resist on everyone. That helps not only to avoid the instant death spike, but also his Demon Purging Fire Burn. It helps a lot as well. So you're able to start off basically every battle a pretty similar way with Dunban. It's not that difficult. It's pretty rinse-repeat as far as that is concerned. And then pretty soon into the fight, you'll eventually get a vision, which will restore your Blossom Dance to full, and you'll be able to change the future really quickly and start a chain attack once everyone is at max tension. It's really good to do with Dunban, if you ask me, and it helps a lot with maximizing his potential. So what I'm doing is going to try to change the future some so I can get max tension on everyone. Ryan's kind of losing some tension because he's having a couple accuracy issues right now. So after changing the future twice, Ryan's going to be at max tension. I'm able to actually start the chain attack. So I want to lower his defense as soon as possible. So that's my first goal. It ends up getting resisted. Then I'm going to break him with Shulk and then try to topple with Ryan. And if I can't topple with Ryan, I'll topple with Dunban. This is not topple locking, I promise. All I'm doing is just getting him toppled so none of my attacks are going to miss during the rest of this chain attack. Like I already said, the chain link chance is 100% if you can hit pretty good perfect QTEs here. And even if you don't, it's still going to be really high with maxed out tension and party affinity and everything like that, along with the skills we have. So I've got Blossom Dance and I've got the max chain attack multiplier. You can kind of just see how much damage this is going to do here, but this isn't going to do that much as compared to everything else as far as just the fact that we're able to keep continuing the chain attack just multiple rounds. I'm able to use Gale Slash here. That's going to do a lot of additional damage. I'm able to continue using Shulk and Ryan's red arts, continue to keep the chain attack going as far as I can. And I'm able to finish it off with Dunban's last red art here, and after that I'm going to run out of like good arts to use, so I'm going to end the chain attack after using Air Slash here without worrying about continuing it. And so he takes 541,000 damage in the chain attack. He's going to stand up really quickly, because like I said, it's not a topple lock strategy. I am going to topple him again really quickly though, just for the extra future chain, just for a little bit of extra benefit. And you can see my party meter's already filled back up again just because of all the damage we did in the previous chain attack and everything else going on. So I'm able to chain attack again. And as you can imagine, this would pretty much end the fight here if I was actually good at this game. But of course, the first QT is a little bit slower than I always expected to be, so I fail it. But that's not really a major issue. We're able to finish him off right after this vision. And if that wasn't enough, you automatically get Blossom Dance back after this vision because of Glorious Future being linked. It's very good. Dunban is amazing at supporting his party and using Blossom Dance and having really strong chain attacks without the need for topple locking. So if you don't want to choose super bosses with a topple locking based strategy, you can just use some high damage setups like this. Even if you don't want to have a major focus on chain attacking, with Soaring Tempest and Peerless, you can get a lot of area of effect damage on a lot of party members, and using Blossom Dance normally can also be pretty useful for clearing out some enemies. I'd still recommend trying to save it for a chain attack normally, but since Dunban has a lot of ways to get Blossom Dance up really fast, it doesn't really matter all that much. Remember, I haven't even used Final Flicker this entire video, and that's another way to get 50% of his gauge instantly if you really, really need it. And if anyone was wondering, the naked Dunban strategy is really not all that great. You could get more agility just from using actual armor gems and everything like that, and far better defenses as well. I'd recommend focusing on other aspects of Dunban anyway, like the damage he can provide and support for his teammates. Dunban's greatest asset as a party member is not only his own high damage, but also his ability to buff his party members who do even more damage also. It ends fights much quicker and allows him to always be useful as a party member on any team, whether he's actually being the dodge tank or not. I hope this guy was able to help you understand how to use him more effectively. Once again, big thanks to Nyarlathotep and other members of the Xenoblade community for help with this. Please check out their character guide below if you prefer a text-based format for learning about the characters. If you enjoyed this guide, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and look forward to future guides on the rest of the characters. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, well played.